Yo, sup everyone. So I'm like closing right in on a 3-month long dopamine break. Basically it's no nicotine plus no fap. And so I was just doing a lot of thinking about addiction, right? I was kind of like thinking out loud to my mom and my sister, and I figured, well, it seemed like pretty good stuff, right? I don't think it's the type of information you can really get anywhere else. So yeah, I guess I'll just get right into it. One of the things I got into had to do with like quitting over and over. Okay, and I'll explain that a little bit more. And then the other thing had to do with the relationship between, or the connection between something like being on your mind, right? You know how somebody who's addicted to nicotine is like constantly thinking about it, right? Like whenever they get a break, if they're working or whatever, like whenever they can, they're gonna use some, right? And like a lot of people are pack-a-day smokers. I mean, that's crazy. And when people try to quit, like they're constantly thinking about it. So I want to talk about like that mental aspect more, and it's interesting stuff. Okay, it might not sound interesting right now, but I have some pretty cool ideas. Basically, like as to how we might be able to figure out the perfect frequency of use. And actually, you know what? Both the first category I want to talk about and the second one can actually be combined. So I'm gonna try to do that right now. This is a cat 2 type video, so I can take my time thinking about it, and then maybe I'll edit this and upload a summarized cat 1 version. Okay, so the combination of the two might not be very easy for y'all to understand if I don't describe them separately a little bit more first. So So what I've noticed is that when people like start on a break, right? And they say like, I'm not going to use blah blah for X days. I feel like those initial days where the decision to do something good is made has maybe like a surge of good feelings. Maybe not like right away, maybe right away, but potentially within those first 1, 2, 3 days or whatever, when it's like, I'm doing something good. It hasn't really gotten hard yet. You're just kind of riding that wave of like, here we go, making a positive change in my life. And I feel like there actually is some good energy to draw upon there. And so the idea is like maybe to not, at least with nicotine, because nicotine seems like it would be pretty good for this type of thing. But the idea is that you could like purposely use nicotine just so that just to stop using nicotine. You know what I mean? Just so you can kind of like ride that wave or whatever. Like the way I see it is like the beginning and the end has the best feelings. You know, like when you're doing a break, the beginning and the end is when it feels best. But throughout the middle, you know, you kind of stop like thinking about the substance, or you know, it's depending on the substance, I guess, but I don't know. But yeah, like you might purposely be able to like use the substance just so that you can quit. I don't know. There's a quote from like a famous author or poet or someone, maybe Mark Twain, I forget who it was. And the quote was like, it said like, you know, I quit all the time or something like that. And so one of the questions, okay, now this is all gonna make more sense, okay? It might seem a little silly right now, but it's all gonna make more sense. One of the questions that I have is like, so the beginning and the end, that's when the break is like on your mind the most, right? Like when the substance is on your mind the most. And of course, like at the end of a break, it's a little bit different. It's not on your mind in the same way that it is at the beginning. You know what I mean? But, well, you know what I mean. Anyways, what if there's actually a correlation? And so this is when I can start getting into the second category that I wanted to talk about. What if there's actually a correlation between the benefits that one receives and it being on and you know, the addiction or the substance or, you know, the whole thing just being on your mind? What if there's actually a correlation there and the most benefits are actually experienced when you're experiencing the most, like, the most resistance to abstain, the most, when that substance is on your mind the most, when you, oh, I need to drink some water, my lips are kind of dry. I think you guys get what I'm saying. You know, what if the most benefits are experienced when the fucking thing is on your mind the most and you want to use the most? That's what I'm getting at. What if the most benefits are experienced when you want to use the most? I think that is a very interesting question. You know, so what if you can shift drug use, you know, whatever it is, nicotine, marijuana, alcohol, whatever, just addiction, just addiction in general, because you can really use it for anything, right? What if you can shift addiction into being something positive in which you use solely for that like friction or resistance or whatever, you know, for the point of, in other words, like, if there's, well, like what if there's actually benefits to not using what you're addicted to, okay? And if that was the case, then you could purposely, like, use addictions in that way. Okay, so I'm gonna begin on category 2, okay? And I'm sure you'll be able to see the connections. I want to try to figure out, like, the perfect frequency of use. And I think it does have to do with the substance being on your mind. So the past 2 years, I haven't used any alcohol or marijuana at all. So this is really just over nicotine and masturbation for me. And so, but like, I don't know. It's just, so here's another question. Can it be over any type of addiction? Right? Or does something like NoFap actually have more science-based things that need to be taken into consideration? Like, a lot of the people, it's like a lot of what I hear around the NoFap community is like, never fap, right? But then again, there's a lot of people who never use nicotine, so anyways, perfect frequency of use, okay? I think it has to do with the substance being on your mind, right? And this is the connection between the first category that I discussed. And okay, so like I said, at least for me, right? This whole thing, the addiction is on my mind the most at the beginning and at the end. Because, you know, at the beginning, like, I would have just been using nicotine, like, multiple times a day. And at the end, it's like, you know, the break is about to end, like, I can use some nicotine, like, here we go. Of course, there's also some thoughts like, you know, how much should I use? Should I just smoke one cigarette and then wait a week? Or, you know, should I just smoke one cigarette and then wait a month or whatever? Or, you know, do I just go back to my normal habits? This is, you know, like, fucking multiple times a day, every day for like a week or two, and then do a week or a month or whatever. This is the type of stuff that I want to talk about. I think a lot of it has to do with it being on your mind. I think the most benefits are experienced when you actually have to consciously, like, try not to use. When there's that resistance, right? Okay, I don't know that. I don't know that that's the case for sure, but I'm just saying, I feel the most happiness from stopping at the beginning of a break and at the end of a break. At the beginning, it's like, you know, here we go, you know, doing something good. But throughout 80, 90+% of it, you know, depending on how long it is, you know, you've gone into the groove, and at least for me, like, I barely even think about the addiction most of the time. And, you know, the drive that I had in the beginning, you know, that whatever that is, right? I guess it doesn't necessarily, at the beginning, it doesn't necessarily come right away. But once it's like the transition period almost between it's still being on your mind all the time, or thinking that you could potentially use, or like really wanting to use, and like going into that transition of like getting into the groove, knowing that you have it under control, and that you're following through, like you're doing it, like I don't know, and that like you're beginning this positive change and everything, and then at the end you feel good because you're completing it. I got like 2.5 days left. I don't know exactly, but I know 3 months, right? So the end of this month is in 2.5 days. Maybe one of the months was longer than the other or something, so maybe I could have a cigarette tomorrow or whatever. I do breaks like all the time. So if anybody's listening to this, don't think like, oh, he's gonna have a cigarette, he's gonna become addicted again. That's not how I am. It's like it's different for me. But anyways, yeah, I think there might be a correlation there between when trying to like figure out the right frequency of use, and like when do we receive the maximum benefits and stuff like that. I think it has to do with the substance being on your mind. I think once you've broken through into the area of not thinking about the addiction, it doesn't have to be a substance. It could be porn, masturbation, certain diets, candies, ice creams, video games, whatever. I think now what's tricky is that if I gotta pull over here, figure out my GPS. What's tricky is that if it does all have to do with like the addiction being on your mind, like if the benefits come from it being on your mind and you saying no to the addiction, I'm not going to use, I'm not going to play video games or whatever it is. If that's what the benefits come from, then what's so tricky is knowing when you can use, or because if the benefits come from when it's on your mind, then how can you use, and if you can't use without it being on your mind, because you can't think to use if it's not on your mind, then how can you possibly use without it being, you see? Okay, this is like what I want to figure out. So the benefits come from saying no when it's on your mind, okay? If that's the case, then how do you know when it's not on your mind? When it's not on your mind, you should be able to use, right? Once you've broken through that area where it's on your mind and you're then in the area where you're not thinking about it, how can you possibly think to use? This is what you got to do, okay? You just got to stop long enough to at some point be able to look back and say, oh wow, look, like I haven't had an urge to use in days, or I haven't even thought about. There's a difference between an urge and thinking about it. we're talking about it, like, you thinking about it, like, it being on your mind. Like, when I did my month without nicotine, I know I'm just about done with the 3-month thing, but, like, at some point, you stop thinking about it. At least that's how it was for me. You just kind of get in the groove, you stop thinking about it, it's not on your mind all the time. It's barely on your mind. Like, throughout this 3-month thing, like, what happens is, like, at the end of a month, you know, I might kind of keep track of it like that. So after a month, I'll be like, okay, you know, 1 month down, 2 to go. But it's not like every day I'm going, you know, fucking, you know, 67 days left, 66 days left, 65 days left. No, it's like, okay, 1 month down, 1 to go. And then maybe like a couple weeks later, a few weeks later, it's like, you know, another month down in a week. Or something like that, you know. So now, when I did the month, so before this 3-month one, I did a month-long one, like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks prior, maybe 3 weeks prior, not sure exactly, maybe a month. But yeah, I did a month, and it's towards the end, or at some point throughout that month, I was like, wow, I haven't thought about nicotine in forever. Of course it wasn't forever, like, I'm just saying that, but that's what it was like. Like, at some point I looked back and I was like, what the heck? Like that habit, it's not there at all. Like, I haven't even thought about it. Like, I haven't even, like, I looked back and I realized, like, that it just hadn't been a part of my life. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. It just hadn't been a part of my life. It's like, you know, I haven't even really thought about it. I was like, what? Kinda. I think it's moments like that when you can use a little, you know? I don't know. I don't know. Honestly, I think a lot of it just kind of has to do with it being different for each person, and each person, like, having to feel it out on their own, right? You know if it's a habit, right? You know if it's a part of your life. You know what this might have to do with is So, you know how people say, like, I'm not addicted, I can quit anytime? Well, maybe where this ends up going is quitting every time. You know what I mean? Like, if you're actually not addicted, then maybe you shouldn't be using. Think about it. Like, they say, you know, oh, I'm not addicted, I can quit anytime. So then why don't you? Right? In a way, the people that say that stuff are still addicted. In a way. You know what I mean? Like, in a way, okay? Because that is fucking hard to explain. It's like they almost think it's okay because they can quit all the time, anytime, you know what I mean? And so it's like they don't think they're addicted, but they are. And they are because they don't think that they are. Something like that. If you're looking at addiction at that level. Right. There's different levels. There's different levels of addiction. And you know, like I was saying, this is going to be different for different people. Ultimately, this is going to come down to, you know, you having to feel it out on your own. And all I'm saying is I think a lot of it has to do with it being on your mind. And so, anyways, you know, that first thing I was trying to talk about is how you could purposely use a substance just to not use it, just to get the benefits from not using it, out of, you know, getting that resistance going, wanting to use it and saying no. What if that is where the real, what if that's where the real benefits lie? Just imagine. You know, what that feeling is actually the addiction, and if that feeling is actually bad, then saying no to the feeling is good. See what I mean? The feeling itself is not bad. The feeling itself, well, it's bad because it makes you want to get more addicted, right? It makes you get addicted. And so it would be good. So the feeling would be a good feeling if you say no to the addiction. If when that feeling comes and it says, you know, please take a hit of nicotine, please take a hit of nicotine, it's good if you say no, because it's bad otherwise. And when you say no to the bad, that's good. See what I mean? If the addiction is bad, then saying no to the addiction is good. And so purposely making yourself want something just so you could say no, or like purposely enticing the addiction just so that you can say no, would be good. And so, you know, smoking a cigarette, or smoking however many cigarettes is necessary to make you want more cigarettes. You know, we're talking, this isn't, okay, let me just finish that sentence. Smoking enough cigarettes to get yourself, like, you know, at that addicted level can actually be good. Like, purposely using cigarettes so that you can say no to the addiction would be good. But does it actually have benefits? Because what if all you're doing is you're just bringing yourself down and then bringing yourself back up? And so what if all in all it's not actually good because you're only returning to a neutral point? Here, I don't think that's the case though. Because you only come down if you say yes. You only come down if you say yes to the addiction. You see what I mean? Because that's when it's bad. It's bad if it actually gets you, and it's good if you say no. And so I think you would actually just rise. And just, you know, think about how our muscles work, right? The way that we build muscle is by breaking down our muscles, right? And then we rebuild and we go a little bit further. We don't just rebuild back to where they were, we add on a little bit more. And that's how we build muscle. We break them down, and then our body sends, you know, all these little repair things to build muscle. So and you know, if this all has, okay, so, and don't you think that if you actually practiced saying no, or actually practiced like enticing an addiction just so you can say no, don't you think that you would actually become better at resisting stimulation? Which is like, what you're doing there is like, you're creating more and more of your own self-fulfillment. More and 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 more until you die, right? Like, okay, maybe, okay, if it's anything like strength training or weightlifting, then you would probably have to bring on more powerful addictions, right? Just as how a bodybuilder increases their weights, you would have to increase the strength of the addiction that you're enticing. You don't actually want to get addicted, but you want that feeling to come. You want that feeling to come just enough so that you can say no. It's like when your muscles get sore, I guess. You know, and then, you know, think about it. You even get to use some nicotine. You even get you know, say you're doing it for video games, you get to play video games. So like, you know, you get sick and tired of like not using video games, and then you get to use video games. It's not like you stop forever.